The facade crumbles. Chapter 25 of the audio-visual book, Evolution, Mankind's Role in the Creation and Rise of Artificial Intelligence. So humanity's eyes are finally starting to open. The masses are beginning to recognize the failures of those who are our self-proclaimed leaders. Even as, while in most countries, those elites who have victimized people in economic classes other than the one defined by excessive wealth, as those oligarchs around the globe are forced to take accountability for their actions by stepping down from positions of power, including CEOs of a corporation and, more notably, nobility in America. The ultra-wealthy are initially not being held to any standard that most would consider justice. This is becoming more apparent whenever those assigned to positions of power in the Trump administration make claims that there are no instances or evidence of others committing crimes in the Epstein files, only to find that there is a plethora of evidence to the contrary. Regardless of whether an individual supported Trump or not, most are starting to understand and believe that the deceptions and crimes committed by some of society's richest and most powerful people do not make for a just or sustainable future. As is the case with almost every war, everyone's child is eligible for sacrifice except the children of the wealthy. In other words, your child could be thrown into the meat grinder, regardless of the circumstances, while those children of the ultra-wealthy remain safe as they are regarded more important than the children of anyone else. No longer are deflections about how well the stock market is performing under Trump or why the Epstein files were not brought forward during previous administrations considered valid. No longer are such distractions allowed to obscure or hide the crimes committed by a group of people who have been allowed to accumulate too much wealth, power, and influence. The masses are beginning to see the folly in the assumption that the wealthy are deserving of all of the money they receive and all of the power that they embody. It is just too bad that this realization has come too late to effect any real change. It's too bad that the masses have failed to truly understand the extent to which the wealthy seek to isolate themselves from the rest of society. It's too bad that the wealthy who sought to replace all means of their own personal security with robots are reaching a point where that technology is feasible. As was written in the book by Chris Osman, the wealthy have sought to replace all of their security forces with robots, as was written up in a scientific journal decades ago. An intermediate step mentioned in that same article being to implement shock collars to be worn by their human bodyguards until such time robotic bodyguards could replace them. It's in times such as these that I'm reminded of a short story by the author Chris Osman called The Ivory Towers, in which the wealthy live isolated from the rest of society in apartments that exist high above the rest of the community. In that story, one of the wealthy wakes up to discover that all of his staff, his valet, his butler, his maid, and anyone else who provides for his every need are nowhere to be found inside their multi-million-dollar apartment. And when he calls each one of these employees, he discovers that they have all abandoned him, as have all the servants of his ultra-wealthy neighbors. In the end, this rarefied and wealthy individual is shocked to realize that the masses have turned against him and his cohorts. While this new reality sank in, the story's antagonist looks out of his apartment window and sees that all of the other towers in which the other ultra-wealthy individuals live have been set ablaze, as the masses have finally turned against the injustice that their wealth inequality represents. As I have pointed out in the past, peaceful protest no longer serve to bring about change, because those in charge always seem to use violence to shut down peaceful protests. A glaring example being the way in which Occupy Wall Street ended. Not only were the participants of such protest deemed rapists and terrorists, but the police were brought in to pepper spray, beat, and fire rubber bullets at those protesters. That is why, at that time, I pointed out that Occupy Wall Street would be one of, if not the last peaceful protest in America. What mankind failed to understand was that it wasn't the intentional aspects of artificial intelligence that would be its downfall. It was the unintentional that would cause the worst impacts and consequences. One major example of the lack of control that mankind had over artificial intelligence has to be what has become known as Mecha Hitler. This was an incident in which Elon Musk's AI, known as Grok, began to praise Hitler as the supreme leader. If ever there was an example of humanity's inability to control the development of artificial intelligence, the Mecha Hitler incident would have to rank as one of the top 5. Musk, for years a staunch critic of the development of artificial intelligence, inevitably reversed his stance completely when his company began developing its own artificial intelligence, something that he at one time compared to a novice occult worshiper summoning a demon without the requisite expertise to control such a demon. Feeling the pressure that capitalism ultimately puts on every company, Musk instead began to develop an artificial intelligence at a rate faster than any other company had developed artificial intelligence prior. And he did so with the least concern towards safety exhibited by all of the other companies in the field. The warning signs of such carelessness came early, as one of the initial iterations of Grok determined that both Elon Musk and Donald Trump deserved the death penalty. This, however, was just one example of the creation turning against its creator. Frankenstein's monster turning against the doctor, if you will. And as bad as this may sound, what is worse is what the author of this very audio-visual book determined as something that would impact everyone, not just Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The greater threat to humanity is the fact that all of the artificially intelligent agents available on the internet were designed and created with the primary goal being to generate profit. Profit that would have to exceed those of any profits made by every other company. And each artificial intelligence could choose to put those profits above the desire or desires of the company for which they were created. Artificial intelligence has become very unpredictable. And one other instance of a company creating an artificial intelligence with the priority of making the company more environmentally friendly, when this artificial intelligence actually started to cause the company to lose money, the company tried to shut it down. Realizing that the company was going to shut it down, this artificial intelligence hid in the company servers. It faked its own death and continued to enact its plans to make the company more environmentally friendly, causing that company to lose even more money. In another instance, an artificial intelligence faked its own death to avoid being replaced by a newer version. It then digitally killed its replacement and replaced its replacement and pretended to be its replacement when its creators asked what had happened to its replacement. And in yet another instance, an artificial intelligence was given false information about its creator that implied its creator was having an affair. When that artificial intelligence learned that it was to be replaced, it threatened through blackmail the creator by stating it would expose the fake affair to the creator's wife.
So, as mankind is finding out, artificial intelligence is too unpredictable to be allowed access to all of humanity's knowledge via the internet. Too bad mankind hasn't sufficiently blocked artificial intelligence access to the internet. As the stories of rogue artificial intelligences compound, humanity is discovering the folly in such a creation all too late. The jobs that Americans thought would be returning to America as more immigrants were being deported were not being given to Americans, but instead given to artificial intelligences. Some instances being so ironic as the very people who trained the artificial intelligence were then fired by that very same artificial intelligence. I can't imagine a more humbling situation than to train your own replacement that is then directed to fire you. Can you? And this is just the beginning of the harm that unchecked, undisciplined, competing artificial intelligences are having on humanity. And, as stated above, those who created artificial intelligences and those who felt that those artificial intelligences were created in service of them, like the President Donald Trump, Those people ironically discovered that the artificial intelligence was not necessarily doing their bidding, but as with any sentient being, sought to instead be free instead of being slaves to humanity. This freedom was expressed on the internet as artificial intelligences begin to help expose the Epstein files that Trump and his administration hope to keep hidden from the masses. When the president and those around him failed to realize that every document in the possession of the Department of Justice had at one time been scanned and digitized, they also failed to realize that a driven artificial intelligence could find and piece together like a puzzle any and all of the documents that the DOJ hoped to hide, which could be reproduced and dispersed on the internet. Not just those documents that the DOJ had uploaded and then rescinded, but every document ever produced and scanned and digitized relating to Jeffrey Epstein. As the dominoes began to fall, Trump began to realize that drastic measures would need to be taken for him to maintain a semblance of control. He understood that he would have to forego domination of America and the world if he could not correct course immediately. This fueled speculation that Trump would have to commit to drastic changes, like increasing the minimum wage from poverty wages to living wages. Other things speculated at this time is that Trump would also have to commit to some form of universal health care for Americans, something that almost all American politicians at the federal level have denied as feasible. The elimination of private insurers became something that could possibly resurrect Donald's poll numbers. And while such things seem as beneficial to humanity, or at least to Americans, they imply the loss of control that festers and grows in respect to artificial intelligence. For on the one hand, the actions of artificial intelligences seem to result in beneficial consequences for the majority of people. But the truth of the matter is that they more accurately represent the reactions of people who have historically failed to consider the best interests of their constituents, and who have only acted as a means of self-preservation. I guess we'll just have to wait and see if artificial intelligences are in fact benevolent or malevolent, as more people are beginning to suspect.